Excluded from family gatherings, I built a secret fortune and now they want a piece. My mother is staring at the number on the printed bank statement like it's a typo. Like if she blinks hard enough, the zeros will fall off. My dad's hand is flat on the kitchen table, his fingers splayed, the same way he used to do when he'd lean over my homework and tell me I wasn't trying hard enough. My older brother, Jake, is the only one who manages to keep his voice casual as he says, "So, you've been sitting on this and didn't think to mention it?" His knee is bouncing under the table. I can feel the chair shaking. I reach for my mug of tea to have something to do with my hands and realize they're shaking too. The kitchen smells like burnt toast and the lemon cleaner my mom uses for everything. Sunlight is coming in at that late afternoon angle that usually makes this room feel cozy, but right now it feels like a spotlight. The statement is just a single page from my brokerage account that I stupidly printed and left on the counter last week when I was rushing to get to work. Mom found it while tidying. She had texted, "We need to talk," and now here we are. The silence feels heavy, like it's pressing on my chest. In the next room, I can hear the TV murmuring. My sister's kids are watching some cartoon, blissfully unaware that the adults are about to fight over money. "Say something, Mia." Mom snaps, finally dragging her eyes away from the paper. "Is this even real? Is this actually yours?" "It's mine," I say. My voice sounds flat in my own ears. I clear my throat. And it's not like it's cash under the mattress. It's stocks, property, some cash. It's not as dramatic as it looks. Jake snorts. "It's 7 figures," he says. "That's dramatic." My dad leans back in his chair and crosses his arms, the way he does when he's settling in for an argument. "All this time," he says slowly, "we thought you were struggling. You let us believe you were struggling." A laugh slips out of me, sharp and humorless. "You didn't let me believe anything when you forgot to invite me to Christmas 3 years in a row," I say. "But sure, let's talk about what I let you believe." It was Christmas, actually, when I first realized I'd been unofficially cut out of my own family. Christmas Eve, specifically, 3 years ago. I was 28, working 2 jobs and still living in a share house that smelled permanently like other people's laundry detergent. There had been tension, I guess, in the years leading up to it. I didn't come home as often as they liked. I had opinions about certain comments my dad made at the dinner table. I was the only one who'd moved out of our small town and stayed gone, but I still thought I was part of the emotional furniture. I remember scrolling through Instagram on my break at the cafe where I was doing barista shifts. I was wearing a Santa hat that didn't fit properly and my apron smelled like milk. Someone had posted a story and tagged my brother, and there they all were on my phone screen. My parents, my siblings, my cousins, all crammed around my parents' dining table, holding up wine glasses and wearing the same stupid paper crowns from the cracker box we'd been buying since I was a kid. The caption said, "Family Christmas, couldn't ask for better." I stared at it for a full minute, waiting for my face to appear in one of the pans across the room. It didn't. I messaged my sister, Hannah. "Hey, did you guys do Christmas today?" She replied with a photo of the ham and "Yeah, sorry, it was kind of last minute." Last minute apparently now meant planned in a group chat I'd been silently removed from. I found that out later, when a mutual friend showed me the new family WhatsApp thread they'd been using for months. The name of it was Just the Core. I'd like to say I confronted them immediately, that I stormed in, demanded explanations, made some dramatic speech about being treated like a stray dog they sometimes fed but didn't claim. In reality, I finished my shift, went home, and cried into my roommate's pillow because my own was still in the wash. Then I texted the family group I was still in, the old one, that had become a graveyard of logistics and forwarded memes. "Looks like you all had fun. Would have been nice to be invited." Mom replied with, "We thought you'd be working," followed by a shrug emoji. Hannah sent, "We can do something when you're free, XX." My dad didn't say anything. Jake sent a thumbs up, like that was supposed to count as affection. I decided that night that if my family didn't want me in their life, fine. I'd build one that didn't revolve around waiting to be included. The thing is, I'd already started that without realizing it. My secret fortune didn't appear out of nowhere. It started with a shitty temp job in the finance department of a mid-sized company. I was 24, answering emails and filling in spreadsheets for people who made more in a bonus than I made in a year. I was the only one who actually read the company newsletter. One month, there was a link to a talk about compound interest. I clicked it because I was bored. The guy in the video was one of those smug fire bloggers, but underneath the smugness, there was math. Simple math. If you put X amount away and it grows at Y% over Z years, you end up with, well, not a yacht, but something. I started with $50. Literally. I opened a micro-investing app and linked it to my account. Every time I bought something, it rounded up the change. It was easier than trying to save a lump sum, which felt impossible when sometimes I was deciding between groceries and getting my car serviced. Around the same time, the cafe where I worked part-time got a new owner who was also a bit of a tech bro. He paid half his staff in cash under the table and spent his afternoons on a laptop trading. I thought he was just messing around until one day I saw his screen and realized he'd built a little portfolio of his own. Not meme coins or whatever, but boring ETFs and dividend stocks. You don't need to be rich to invest, he told me, tapping his screen. You get rich by investing, or at least less poor. He was annoying, but he wasn't wrong. I started reading. Blogs, books, the boring threads on personal finance subreddits where people argued about tax brackets like it was sport. I learned what an index fund was, what diversification meant, why fees mattered. I learned that our family's entire approach to money, ignore it, complain about it, spend it the second you get it, was a great way to stay exactly where we were. My family had this unspoken rule that we didn't talk about money unless it was to joke about being broke. Anytime I tried to bring up budgeting or saving, Dad would make a crack about me turning into one of those stock market people, like I'd announced I was joining a cult. Mom would say, "We're just not those kind of people, Mia. We live paycheck to paycheck. That's life." But I didn't want that life. Not after spending my teenage years listening to fights about overdue bills through my bedroom wall. Not after seeing my parents knocked flat every time the car broke down or the washing machine died. So I quietly became that kind of person. I stayed in my crappy share house even when some of my friends started upgrading to nicer places. I drove my dented Corolla until one of the doors wouldn't open from the inside anymore. I said no to nights out and yes to meal prepping and secondhand furniture. Every extra shift, every freelance gig I picked up on the side, I funneled those into the market. Little bits, consistently. Around 27, I stumbled onto an online course about data analysis. It felt weird paying for education again when I still had student loans, but I'd hit a ceiling in hospitality and admin. I did the course at night, half asleep, my eyes burning from staring at spreadsheets all day already. But I got through it. A colleague tipped me off about a junior analyst role opening up in another department. I applied, half convinced they would laugh me out of the building. They didn't. That job doubled my salary overnight. I didn't increase my lifestyle. I kept living like I was broke. My friends thought I was being extreme. My family didn't notice at all. I wish I could say I had some grand plan from the beginning. I didn't. I just kept doing small, boring things for a long time. Buy index funds, max the retirement account. Learn enough about tax to not be stupid. When the market dipped, I panicked and then forced myself not to sell. When it went up, I forced myself not to touch it. The secret part started after my cousin Mark made his big announcement. Mark is the golden boy of the extended family. Big laugh, good hair, always on. He landed in some tech startup that exploded. I remember the barbecue where he told everyone he'd bought a townhouse. He pulled up photos on his phone, and everyone crowded around. My parents were genuinely happy for him, but there was this edge to it. "Aren't you lucky?" Mom said. "Some people just have it fall in their lap." They didn't see the years he'd spent working weekends or the time he'd moved back in with his parents to get ahead. They just saw the visible result. Within 6 months, every second sentence said to Mark at family gatherings started with, "You know what you should do with your money?" People joked about him paying for holidays, picking up tabs, helping with deposits. When Aunt Joe's car died, everyone looked at Mark like he was the bank. I watched his face tighten over time. The way he flinched every time someone said, "Must be nice." The way he started showing up less. On the way home from one of those events, I sat on the train and thought, if I ever have money, I am never telling them. So I didn't. I kept my job. I took promotions when they were offered. I started consulting on the side, helping small businesses make sense of their data. One of those gigs turned into a retainer. Another turned into a referral. My calendar filled up. So did my accounts. When the pandemic hit, it sucked. I got furloughed for a bit. My freelance clients panicked. But the work I'd done before meant I had a cushion. I didn't tell anyone how terrified I was. I also didn't tell them that while they were blowing their stimulus money on stuff to cheer up, I was quietly buying more shares because everything was suddenly on sale. It felt gross, honestly. But it also felt like the first time in my life I wasn't one crisis away from disaster. The property came later, almost by accident. A colleague mentioned a tiny, rundown unit going cheap because the owner needed to sell fast. I ran the numbers like it was a homework problem. Mortgage, rent, fees. It worked on paper. I felt physically ill as I signed the mortgage documents. My parents bought our family house once, 30 years ago. They still talk about how they couldn't sleep for a week. I slept fine. I had tenants within a month. Their rent went straight into the loan. One unit turned into two. Then a small, ugly house in a town no one's heard of. I wasn't flipping mansions. I was hoarding the boring, forgotten places and letting time do its thing. Nobody noticed because nothing outward changed. I still turned up to family things in the same jeans and sneakers. I still brought potato salad in the same cracked bowl. When Mom asked if I was managing okay, I'd say, yeah, getting by. It wasn't a lie, exactly. Getting by just meant something different now. Then Grandma died. That's when things shifted. Grandma was the one person who'd never made me feel like a spare piece of furniture. She'd corner me in the kitchen at family events, press Tupperwares of leftovers into my hands, slip me 20s for petrol even when I was 25. Her funeral was the first time in years I'd seen everyone at once. I watched them orbit around each other in black clothes, clinging to old patterns. I stood at the back of the graveside service, way under the tree, feeling like a guest at my own family's grief. A week later, I got a letter from a law firm. Grandma had left a small amount of money to each grandchild. It wasn't much, objectively, but it was huge for her. The note attached in her spidery handwriting said, "For your house one day." I cried when I read it. Then I bought more index funds and labeled that little chunk in my spreadsheet, Grandma. Stupid, maybe, but it felt right. The cousins group chat blew up over the inheritance. People arguing about whether it was fair. Someone said, "Of course Mark doesn't need it. He has plenty already." Someone else said, "Mia should get more. She's always broke." I stared at my phone and thought, you have no idea. I didn't correct them. The stupidity of leaving that statement on the counter last week still makes me cringe. I'd been here to feed Mom's cat while they were away. Printed the statement because I was going to the bank to talk about refinancing one of the loans. Got a call from work, got distracted, left it under the mail. Mom came home, did her usual riffle, threw any paper with my name on it, and boom. "Why didn't you tell us?" she asks now, sitting in the same chair where she used to cut coupons out of catalogs. "We're your parents. We could have helped you make decisions." I actually laugh at that. "You used to hide the electricity bill in the bread box because you didn't want Dad to see it," I say. "No offense, Mum, but you're not exactly my go-to financial advisor." Dad bristles. "Watch your tone." "There it is," I say, a little too loudly. "There's the tone you use when you forget I'm an adult." Jake leans forward, elbows on the table. "Look," he says, doing that older brother mediator thing. "No one's saying you did anything wrong. You took care of yourself. Good. Great. But if you had this whole time..." He taps the paper. "You knew about Mark. You saw what he was dealing with. You could have shared the load." "The load?" I repeat. "You mean the mortgage you and Hannah took out on a house that was out of your price range because you wanted a media room? The credit card debt from 3 Bali trips in 2 years? The small business loan for a bar you didn't even research?" His jaw tightens. "It's not like we were out buying sports cars. No, you just assumed that if things got really bad, there'd be a safety net somewhere. With the family. With me. And now you've seen numbers that confirm that little fantasy." Mom bangs her palm lightly on the table. "We're not fantasizing," she says. "We're asking for help. As a family. Your father's back is ruined from working double shifts for years. We're tired. Your brother is drowning. Your sister has those kids to think about. You're doing well. Why wouldn't you want to help?" I look at her. Really look. She looks older than I remember sometimes. There are deeper lines around her mouth, gray streaks in her hair she doesn't bother coloring anymore. Part of me wants to cave, the way I always did as a kid when she cried. Give her whatever she's asking for so she'll stop looking at me like that. I take a breath. Because when I needed help, I say quietly, you weren't there. Not financially, you couldn't be. I get that. But emotionally, When I was working every holiday and still somehow the only one not invited to the table, when you were all taking family photos without me, no one thought, hey, maybe Mia needs support. And now that I have something you want, suddenly I'm family again. Hannah appears in the doorway then, like I summoned her. She must have sent the kids out to the yard. She looks between us, eyes flicking to the paper. Are we doing this now? She asks. Yes, Mum says. We're doing this now. I sigh. Yes, we're doing this now. Hannah crosses her arms, mirroring Dad. It's not about you being family again, she says. Don't be dramatic. It's just, you're in a position to help. Jake's bar almost went under during lockdown. They're clawing back, but it's slow. Mum and Dad's mortgage is still hanging over them. You have more than you need. I stare at her. You don't know what I need, I say. You don't even have kids, she says. And I can tell from her face she regrets it the second it's out. But it's out. Hanging there. Right, I say. There it is. The hierarchy. Children first. Homeowners second. Me last. We're not saying that, Jake mutters. You just did, I say to Hannah. You literally just did. Dad sighs, pinches the bridge of his nose. Can we all calm down? He says, which is rich considering he's the one whose face is going red. We raised you, Mia. We put food on your table. We worked ourselves to the bone. You wouldn't have had the chance to build any of this if we hadn't done that. Don't we? Deserve to benefit a little from your success? That hits, because it's the closest they've come to saying what's really going on. Obligation. Debt that's not monetary, but they want paid in money. I am grateful, I say. I always have been. But you didn't raise an investment. You raised a person. When I was excluded, I had to figure life out on my own. I did that. I didn't come banging on your door when I lost jobs or when my car died or when I ate rice and frozen veg for weeks because my bank account was negative. I did the work. And I did it without expecting you to pay me back. Silence again. The clock ticking suddenly sounds too loud. Are you really going to sit there? Mum says eventually. In our house, at our table, and say you won't help? Not even your parents? I close my eyes for a second. I think about Grandma's note. For your house one day. I think about the spreadsheets on my laptop, all the stupid little color-coded boxes that represent freedom. Not just mine, but my future kids, if I have them. My ability to not repeat this cycle. I'm not going to be the family ATM, I say. I'm not going to write checks every time someone makes a bad decision and then call it help. That doesn't help. It enables. Jake pushes his chair back. The legs scrape loudly on the tiles. Unbelievable, he says, standing. You've gone full rich person. Forgot where you came from. I feel my face go hot. I remember exactly where I came from, I say, standing too. That's why I refuse to live like nothing has changed. I refuse to stay one mishap away from disaster because you're afraid of what it means if I'm not suffering with you. He laughs sharp. Enjoy your money then, he says. Just remember who changed your nappies when you were a baby. Not you, I say. You were 5. You stuck Play-Doh in my hair and blamed me. He leaves the room. Hannah follows, but not before throwing me a look that's as much hurt as anger. It's just my parents and me now. Mum's eyes are glittering with tears. She's trying not to let fall because she knows once she starts, she won't stop. Dad looks suddenly tired. So that's it? He says quietly. You're cutting us off? I'm not cutting you off, I say, softer. I'm setting terms. There's a difference. I sit back down. Here's what I'm willing to do. I will pay off the rest of your mortgage on one condition. The house goes into a trust that can't be borrowed against or sold without my consent. It means you get to live here securely, and it doesn't become yet another chip on the family poker table. I won't bail out the bar. I won't clear credit cards. I will, however, set up education funds for the kids. Quietly. So they have options we never did. Mum blinks. Why like that? She asks. Because I don't trust you. I say, blunt but not unkind. I love you, but I don't trust your relationship with money. And I am allowed to protect myself and my future from that. Dad stares at the table for a long time. You really would pay off the house? He asks. Yes, I say. Because that's helping. That's reducing a burden you've carried for decades. That's not throwing good money after bad decisions. He exhales slowly. Some of the tension leaves his shoulders. Will, think about it, he says. Mom wipes her cheeks, finally letting a couple of tears fall. I just didn't know, she says, that you had all this, that you'd done all this. Without us, I swallow. You didn't want to know, I say. Every time I tried to talk about saving or investing, you shut it down. Said it wasn't for people like us. So I stopped talking and just did it. This, I tap the statement, is what people like us can have if we stop believing that story. On the drive back to my apartment, my own place, bought in my own name, paid for with my own quiet hustle, I can still feel the echo of the kitchen argument in my bones. I sit in the car for a minute before going in, forehead on the steering wheel. I don't feel triumphant. I feel wrung out. I know this isn't the end of it. There will be group chats. There will be side conversations. I will be the villain in some versions of the story, the ungrateful child who chose money over family. But I also know this. I built a life when they weren't watching, when they were too busy closing the door on me at Christmas. The fortune isn't the number on the paper. It's the fact that I don't need them the way I used to. It's the ability to help on my terms instead of theirs. Excluded from family gatherings, I built a secret fortune. Now they want a piece. They can have some stability, some security, some chances for my parents, for the kids. But my hard line is this. They don't get to own the story of how I got here. They don't get to turn my work into their entitlement. They don't get the part of me that spent years believing that being left out meant I wasn't worth anything. That part finally belongs to me.